Good evening, everyone. We are going to continue with our committee of the whole meeting regarding our budget and specifically circlebacks. I would ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Pezza.
Here.
Gutenkopf.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Dunn. He looks absent. Bram.
Here.
Volumsky, absent. York.
Here.
Tipskin, absent. Healy.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Morley.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Looks like 11 present, 3 absent.
11 present, 3 absent. We have a quorum. We don't have public forum on the agenda, but I will open it up. We've already had 2 rounds already tonight. If anybody else would like to speak, we are totally open, transparent here in Elmhurst, and we will let you speak, so let us know. Anybody? Okay. We will move on. Any time limits, questions, or Alderman York?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to maybe get a sense on what our time frame was for tonight, given that we were supposed to start this at 8 o'clock, and
right.
I know there's some serious issues that some serious discussions that I think are going to be forthcoming from this, so I didn't know if we wanted to get into it all tonight or if we wanted to kind of set some time limits. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as a question to the council.
Very good, very good. I was hearing at 10:15. Is that okay with staff?
We're here as long as you want to be here.
Okay. All right.
What's for breakfast?
Yeah.
We'll order breakfast.
There you All right. Alderman Healy.
Just a quick question from a legal timing standpoint with the budget documents. We're not under any kind of restriction, or we've got to have the budget done by this time, or if we do we have enough time that we can lengthen this out if we need to?
The budget has to be filed with the county by April 30th. So we have some time in there.
Thank you.
All righty. So I would say 10 o'clock. If we go to 10:15, that'll be at the outer end. Okay. So we're going to set that as a game plan, and we'll move on. City Manager Grabowski, we're doing circlebacks.
Yeah, if we're going to limit the time, then I would ask if we could move to the library issue, because I know that the director's here. And
very good. Mary Beth? Very good. Excellent. We'll go right to the library, and
Page 193.
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
You want me to?
You had the question on the circleback?
I did,
Alderman
yeah.
Levin, I believe it was overtime that you had a question on?
Yeah, I have Alderman York and I met with the president and the director of the library, and one of the things that it's a $125,000 item, but to clarify for those that didn't understand it, and it's important to understand, that amount is not entirely overtime or premium time. It's the total amount of salary plus the overtime, so it's probably about a third of that. And we spoke about perhaps as we move forward, re-characterizing the part that is not really overtime into the regular salary budget, so it would reflect reality a little better. And I don't know if the finance director has been involved in that or concurs or not, but that was the opinion that I think we had, or Alderman York and I. And beyond that, we asked the library board to address the issue of in this day and age, is premium pay for working on Sunday a good policy or not? And I don't plan on making any more of an issue of it before the council. I think we have a new director, and I think that it's something that should be looked at over the next year, and that my request for circleback was adequately answered at that point.
Very good. Alderman York.
Yeah, I think Alderman Levin, characterized it. I've had a number of discussions with the library director, and it was nice to meet with the board president, and did answer our questions sufficiently. And I have a very good feeling that, much like we have in our budget, proposed budget, some numbers for consultants to look into the way things are operated. I feel pretty certain that the library is kind of taking that fresh new approach to their operations and their expenditures and revenues and everything involved in their business. So I'm good with it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Okay, anybody else? Questions on the circle back for the library? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. City Manager Grabowski?
Yes, thank you. Mary Beth, I don't think anyone will be insulted if you don't want to stay for the rest of the budget.
She's here because she's interested.
We always love your presence, Mayor.
You're
but,
certainly welcome.
We know you got family and other things to do too, so, thank you. Keep up the good work over there. Mm-hmm.
With that, I would just say that in your packet was delivered a spreadsheet addressing all of the circled items and then questions needing a response below that. What we tried to do was best describe where the issue was and what the additional information that was requested. So if you choose to just go down the list, we can have a discussion.
Okay, very good. All right, the circle back and the first item. I don't know who specifically had that question, but any questions or concerns on that particular item? It's for the, Alderman Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that one was mine. And I believe I had similar questions throughout the budget. So the comments I'm going to make now pretty much address any concerns or issues I had relating to really personnel and staffing. I would ask my fellow council members, direct them to page 25 in their budgets if they have that. This is kind of one of the things that I've been looking at. You can certainly go through all, I don't know, 4,000 line items.
125 was that, Alderman? What was?
Page 25.
Page 25. Got it.
As I was saying, I think we could go through all 4,000 line items, and Marilyn will probably know what was in every single one. But I certainly don't. But I think this page, for me, is one of the most important. If you look down the bottom right-hand corner of the page, under the column 2012-2013 proposed, total full-time excluding libraries, 265, which is in our budget. I want to draw attention to the budget number, or to the number that's next to it, 256. As the council's aware, we put in a hiring freeze first week of April of last year. And I think a big chunk of what you're seeing, the difference in these two numbers, strictly through attrition, not through releasing anybody, but strictly through attrition. In about 10 months, we saw our staff numbers drop by almost 10. And I think that's very, very important to note. Depending on how you slice up this budget, you know, sometimes I'll ask Marilyn the unfair question, well, what's the operating budget? Well, we don't really have an operating budget. We got capital projects over here, and we've got city operating budgets over here, and they overlap a little bit. But depending on how you slice this budget, the way I look at it, 69% plus of our operating expenses are salaries, wages, benefits, insurance, pension contribution. It's a big number. It's one that we all need to be mindful of. As I mentioned, I did pull or request circle backs on many of the staffing items, to the point where City Manager Grabowski and I had the opportunity to talk, and he said, Alderman Morley, what's your point? You seem to have circle back on all the vacant positions. And that's true. With the exception of police, I did have a circle back with all the positions. To the point, to answer Mr. Grabowski's question, what am I looking for? I'm not saying it's easy, but what I want is for City Manager Grabowski to maintain the current high level of services we have in this city. On top of that, I want him to spend less money. I'm not saying it's an easy formula, but he asked me what I wanted. That's my expectation. I ask, and it really applies to all open positions, to be more specific. I am not, and I want to be clear, I am not advocating the termination of any employee, nor am I advocating the reduction of any services that we currently provide. What I'm asking City Manager Grabowski to do, and city staff, and I think we're clear on this, we had a good conversation. I don't expect the jobs to go away. I'm just looking for a creative and less costly way to get the job done. How do we do that? Whether it's part-time employees, outsourcing, partnering with other communities, eliminating services that overlap with township services, anything we can do to stretch our dollar that we get from our citizens, that's what I'm looking for. When City Manager Grabowski was first hired, I had the pleasure of taking him out to lunch in his first week, and we had a great conversation. And I had a similar conversation to what I stated with him right here. City Manager Grabowski has stated this is a status quo budget. And to me, that means there's no surprises. It also means that City Manager Grabowski is being very cautious and very thorough as he evaluates and presents this budget. Certainly, he's been here 8 months, 10 months. I don't expect him to change things overnight, and I appreciate his conservative approach. However, I did ask him at that lunch if he had an opportunity to reduce permanent headcount within the city, because ultimately I believe that the consideration for filling any job needs to be a long-term consideration, not only with salary, but benefits and pension that can go on 20, 30 years. In this budget, City Manager Grabowski has eliminated 2 positions and has hinted through conversation that there is the potential to possibly look at other positions that are open and possibly fill them with part-time. I find that a very attractive proposition, because even though the job is getting done and getting done with experienced personnel, we are not obligated to pay insurance or pension benefits. So, City Manager Grabowski, what am I looking for? The budget that is as presented shows the reduction of 2 and the addition of 1. I'm hoping that as we go through this budget and go through these circle backs, you can tell me that in the last month and a half, as going through this budget, you have been able to identify and permanently eliminate another full-time position. In effect, what I'm looking for is, at a minimum, an elimination of 3 slots permanently and the addition of 1. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. City Manager Grabowski.
If I could comment on that.
Sure.
Specifically, the position that you had brought up in the Public Works was the inspector position. And I'm happy to tell you that our recruitment has been for 2 part-time people to replace a full-time position. And we're going through that process right now, so by your count, as we spoke of this afternoon, you could actually take that number to 264 in the sense that it's not a full-time person that we're hiring, but we're looking for part-time people. So your comments certainly have been taken to heart, and the directors all understand that this is the direction that we're moving in.
Alderman?
Thank you very much, City Manager Grabowski. I appreciate you looking at this, and I just want to be clear, I'm not advocating the elimination of any current employees. I'm just asking you to take a hard look when we're talking about hiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Anybody else? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question for clarification. I thought this budget already incorporated that change for the Public Works Inspector from a full-time to 2 part-time people. Isn't that what the circle back clarification
No, I believe it was
identifies?
listed, it was listed as a full-time position because we weren't sure at the time when we put the budget together that we could recruit the part-time replacements.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. And how many of those circle backs did that apply to, Alderman?
I'm going to leave that to our capable city clerk, Patty Spencer, or Mr. Grabowski.
Okay. City Manager Grabowski, I'll let you handle that.
The next one is a full-time Public Works utility maintenance position. That is in the budget. It is our intent to fill that. That's certainly a unique position for us. You know, as we move into the future, considerations. The position after that relates back to the Public Works Inspector, which we just talked about. And that would lead us to land improvements in TIF 2, which I believe Alderman Pezza asked to circle back on.
Alderman Pezza?
Thank you, Mayor. I know we had a piece of this addressed in a executive session meeting, but I do have some further questions. Since this budget does not address the stormwater issue, and obviously we're going to need a lot of money for improvements and replacement and everything else, I would support keeping this number here if I knew that part of this would be dedicated to any improvements that would apply to that if need be. If we find that there's something Burke says that we could do within that TIF area that would be sewer related or related to infrastructure that would also help with the storm water improvement, is that a possibility? Is that something we could use that money for?
I believe that's a TIF eligible expense,
Okay.
yes. And as we refine this and go through the up until approval, if we have a new number, certainly we'll plug that in, but we'll continue to look at it and come back to the council with any changes to that.
Okay, because I would say if we've got that money available, first and foremost, if there is something that can be addressed regarding the storm issue, that would make sense to me. I'd appreciate that.
Very good. Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But at the same time, we can release this money from the TIF for the other taxing bodies, and part of what the task force has been talking about involves altering playgrounds and open spaces at the schools and in the parks. And those are the very other taxing bodies that we can release this money to. So, I mean, while I understand that, we'd want to keep some of it for inside the TIF, certainly we're going to be looking for money everywhere we can for stormwater improvements throughout town. And I'm concerned that we've identified money for potential purchases, but we don't quite have a plan for it going forward. And there's an opportunity here to use some of this money for other infrastructure improvements throughout town. It seems like those are appropriate expenses for releasing this money.
I don't know that I have a reply for that. It's certainly one school of thought that we could use the money for.
Keep in mind, if we released it, it's divvied up with the taxing bodies.
But those are the places where we'd be spending, where the money would be spent. I mean,
But if we're looking to put it in stormwater, you're not going to be able to put it in stormwater. You're going to have to give schools, parks, and then they have to put it in stormwater.
Right.
Right. But their
Right.
job is not to do stormwater. Our job is to do stormwater.
But the Burke proposal identified all this open space in the parks and said, why don't
Right.
we just dig a bunch of big holes and put the water there? So it's in the park or in the school lot.
Sure. I get you. It makes sense. Very good.
We just covered the library issue. The next would be professional services, and that was the salary compensation study. And in your packet was a memorandum from Valerie Johnson, which I thought explained it very well. And if there's any questions, we can answer those.
Questions? Anybody? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Yeah, the memo from HR Manager Valerie Johnson identifies the $75,000, but the line is $142,700, and I'm sorry, but I don't remember the detail from our previous discussion. So why does the memo reference the 75?
If you let us get to that line, Michael explained the other items in that expenditure.
Okay.
Can you identify what page you're on in the budget, so we can get everybody on the same page?
123,
123. Very good.
item 3052. That covers a number of things. The comp study is obviously the largest. There's also money for organizational development and team development for the management team. There's a fire promotional exam in there also. Last time that exam cost about $24,000 to administer. And there's also the money there for the part-time police officers, polygraph, and psychological exams too. That does not go through the Police and Fire Commission. That goes through Human Resources.
Okay. Anybody else with questions? Alderman Kennedy, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding the compensation study, the $75,000, do you have an expected ROI for that expense? I mean, certainly, you're going to learn a whole bunch of information that hopefully will guide you to better decision-making that will ultimately have a financial payback. If you looked at other communities that have done this sort of thing or things that we've done in the past, what's been the approximate payback on an effort like this?
As far as dollar-wise, I can't tell you that. I mean, the potential is we understand where we are in compensation. And I mean, the compensation studies come back sometimes and say you're underpaying. Sometimes they come back and say you're overpaying. I mean, it's to determine where you are in that spectrum, both internally, externally, public sector, private sector. That's what we're looking at. And I don't have that answer, what that's going to be.
Alderman Wagner, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To follow back up on Chairman Kennedy's question there, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank here. Did this go out to bid?
It did not go out to bid yet. No, there'll be an RFP developed before we do.
Okay.
And the RFP, you'll all see the RFP, I'm sure, before we send it out to consultants to.
And follow up, please.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Since we have some time to submit the budget to the county, I wouldn't mind getting a listing of the other expenses that make up the $74,000.
It's in here.
142,000?
It's 142 in the budget book and it's 75 on the memorandum.
Organizational development consulting, $10,000. Part-time police psychological evaluations, $4,000. Part-time police polygraph, $7,500. Fire lieutenant BC promotional exam, $24,000. Training, which I talked about, the organizational, the training, trying to restore some of the training we have lost over the last couple of years. That's $22,000 for a total of $142,700.
If we could just get that, maybe emailed or something.
Sure.
That would be great. I couldn't write that fast. I'm sorry. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Alderman Pezza.
Thank you. Just to follow up with Alderman Wagner's point, obviously then this $75,000 figure is a guesstimate from what we've seen maybe charged for this service?
Correct. We've done some research asking around other towns and stuff what the cost was.
Thanks.
Good. Anybody else? Questions? Alderman York.
I looked at this memo and it made a lot of sense to me. Obviously, I understand that this is a placeholder for this evaluation, but I think to go back to Alderman Morley's point that he made earlier, if you look at the general fund and the municipal utility funds, which in essence really takes out everything except for the library and a couple other little dollar amounts here and there, you're looking at $34.3 million worth of salaries, wages, and benefits. And I think, the things that stood out to me in this report are the last time a formal compensation study was conducted for the entire organization was back in the 1980s. I mean, for crying out loud, that's a long time ago. And we need to take a look around at that and make sure we're relevant and we're with today's times. Before we were unionized, non-union staff in 91 and 2004, and I think economically this makes a lot of sense. I mean, as the report indicates, there's pressure on government wages and things like that. So I think, I'm assuming it's going to come to our committee, and should I be here when it does, I know myself and I'm certain my other committee members too will be looking at the credentials of this research firm and making sure that they understand that, we're looking at a government entity, but we need to look at the entire landscape as we go throughout this. So I can't really think of any money that would be more well spent than to take a look at our compensation system and kind of get everything in check. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Alderman. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. City Manager Grabowski. Next item.
Thank you. The next item is consulting fees in the Planning and Zoning Division. And what we attached is another spreadsheet which shows the three consultants specific to that department. And what I'd like to point out is that on two of them, we've only budgeted a percentage of what their actual contract is. For Mr. Van Slyke, it's 86.5%. For Mr. Bartels, it's 65.1%. And then for the Feinzall Group, it is 100%. We expect to use that, so it's an average of 82% as a whole to what their maximum contracts are.
Mr. Mayor?
Good. Yep, oh, sorry, Alderman Healy.
If I may, given that we've already said that we'd like to knock off at 10 o'clock, and I think it was Alderman York mentioned that we've got some serious conversations to occur on some of the circle back items, I think this is probably one of them, especially in conjunction with the Assistant City Manager position. So if I might suggest we push this one off and not try to tackle it in, you know, if we're gonna try to knock off at 10 or 10:15, my suspicion is that this conversation will go a bit longer than that and probably should be taken with the Assistant City Manager job. So maybe we jump this one and try for a little smaller one, would be my suggestion.
Okay. That's the agreement? Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. The only one left then would be Fire Department, and I believe that was Alderman Morley, and I don't know if that's been addressed with the conversation that we've already had.
Alderman Morley?
No additional comments besides what I stated.
Okay. Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mayor. If I can add one that I think we can handle quickly, it's not really a circle back, but it's part of the budget. A couple weeks ago, in relation to a question that came up about salt, I gave the council a quick update on where we were in terms of usage and storage and whatnot. Tonight, during the council meeting, we did pass a report recommending how much we should purchase. In that report, it mentioned a low amount and a high amount based on today's prices. The high amount, even at today's prices, is considerably lower than the budgeted amount that we have in this budget, to the tune of about $115,000. So I think we should reduce our budget. Now, understanding that the estimates for the dollars spent on the high end are in today's dollars and today's prices. There might be a little wiggle room. There might be some fluctuation in cost. So the 115 that I'd like to see us reduce from the budget is not exactly to the dollar amount on the high side because there might be some wiggle room. But I would like to move that we reduce the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget by $115,000 and to have that $115,000 come out of the $147,000 that are budgeted from the general fund, thereby making the general fund expenditure $32,000.
What, can you get line item and page number on that? Page 150?
Thank you, Marilyn. And the account number is 110-6042-433-4046.
One that says salt.
I believe that would be the one.
Second.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to reduce that 147 down to 32. Is that what you're saying, Alderman?
Correct. So in other words, the entire reduction of the salt budget would come from the general fund, leaving the motor fuel tax fund expenditure of $188,000 in place.
Staff have any issues?
No, looking at Director Hughes, we've been fortunate with a mild winter, and so we'll have some extra stores of salt, and we'd be comfortable with that.
Okay, okay, very good. Any questions or discussion? Staff is in agreement? Got a motion and a second. I will ask for a vote here if we don't have any questions or discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, roll call.
I think we need to do a roll call. It's money. It's expenditure.
Okay,
All right.
roll call, Clerk Spencer.
Healy.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palumski, absent. York.
Yes. Aye.
Tipskin.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Morley.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Okay, that's,
Pezza, aye.
oh, I'm sorry, Pezza.
Aye.
That's 13 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, that passes. Chairman Wagner with a question?
I did get my hand up fast enough before Alderman Healy, but I wanted to ask Mike, going back to the firemen, which station needed the firemen? Which station needs the firemen?
There's not a specific station, it's for a shift. You know what I mean?
Right,
So, it's,
we're down one though, right?
yeah, we're down one right now, and so it's not a specific station, it's,
Okay.
you know, I mean, it's just, we're short one person, so it hasn't, so, depends on when it's gotta be filled back in or when it doesn't, depending on how many people are off that day, so.
Thanks, sorry.
It's okay, very good. It is 10 o'clock. The next items would take some time, so we will continue this at our next meeting. At this time, I'd ask for a motion and a second to adjourn. Alderman Morley with a motion, Alderman Hipskin with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
That's next Monday.